Everyone, welcome back to the channel, Mr. Truthful, where we tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you to all the new subscribers. I'm up to 14 subscribers now from my old channel that had 13,000 subscribers, but you have to start from scratch sometimes, and that's just life. But anyway, so what are we going to talk about today on my channel? We are going to talk about expansion batteries. And when you buy an expansion battery for your EcoFlow or, you know, your Bluetti or whatever the brand is, Aferiy, they tend to be quite expensive. The expansion battery for my Aferiy is 1,200 quid. It's actually cheaper to buy another solar generator than buy the expansion batteries. But if, like me, you have lots of spare gear lying about, sometimes you can do a little bit of a workaround battery hack, call it what you want, but you can basically make your own expansion battery for pretty much any solar generator. So before we get into that, let me talk through what we've got in front of you. Right, 48 volt battery. This little battery hack can be done with 24 or 48 volt battery, or you can do it with a series of 12 volt batteries and you could put them into series. So it's quite versatile. Now, this was from a company called DC House. It's a 1.2 volt, 50 amp hour LiFePO4 battery. This one's got 16 cells in it, 50 amp hour cells. So you get 2,560 watt hours, okay? And I got this for about 200 quid. Now, what we've got in front of me is the BMS, and unfortunately I burnt the BMS out because I was not concentrating and I connected up the battery terminal. Instead of putting it in parallel, I accidentally put it in series, and basically it blew up the BMS. And not only did it blow it up on this one, it also blew it up on my other DC House battery, which I need to repair. So I went on to AliExpress, put in the serial number and the part number for the BMS, ordered it, and basically put it in. And it's quite straightforward. You just put on some new battery terminals, recrimp it. These server rack batteries are dead easy to get into, very straightforward. So for that purpose, they are great. So what we're going to do is we are going to create our own expansion battery. And what we've got here is we've got a DC dual pole isolator. So these basically are used in most solar arrays, and it could be used for your PV, but in this case, it's going to be used to isolate the battery from the power bank that we're going to be putting it on. And also what we have here is we have some battery terminals and we have a male XD90 cable, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to cut this probably halfway, and we're going to connect up the DC isolator. And what we're going to do then is I'm going to bring in the power bank and we're going to connect it all up, switch it on, and I'll show you what it does to the power bank. Right, so what we've done now is we've stripped back some of the insulation. This is 10 gauge wire that I'm using. When you're using 48 volt, you can get away with a thinner gauge wire. So we've done the same there. In an ideal world, you'd want to put some ferrules on the end. The ferrule is like a crimp that you put on the end. So rather than having strands of wire, you have like a metal crimp on the end, and it stops the wires from splaying all out. But you don't necessarily need to do it, but it would be nice. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to connect up our DC isolator. Now on here, you've got plus and minus. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow the instructions, and what we're going to do is we're going to get our screwdriver, and literally all you do is screw it down, and we're going to make sure that we've got a nice contact. It's like a battery clamp. They kind of come together as you're screwing them in. Now the thing is, with these, you don't want to over tighten them, but you also don't want them to be loose. So give that a tug, make sure that's not coming out. And what we're going to do is we're going to do exactly the same on the other side. So we unscrew it and put it in like that. Make sure it's both on the same side, obviously. You don't want to get that mixed up. And then we're going to screw it down. Again, make sure it's, once you think you've got it tight, give it a tug. Now you see that one came out, so it's not tight enough. So come back in a minute and I'll show you the finished product. Right, so we've got our little extension cables done. So battery terminal, isolator, go into your XD90. Now, depending upon solar input your power bank has got, it could be an Anderson, it could be a barrel connector. Obviously, just make sure that you've got the cables run the right way. So on this case, you can see we've got red going to red, black going to black. It's pretty straightforward. Right, so make sure you've got it in the off position. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're going to connect up our battery terminals. Okay, now again, if you're not super confident with this stuff, it is pretty straightforward, but if you're not super confident, then my recommendation is don't do it, because it is very easy to A, damage your battery, and B, you could damage your power bank as well, and that could be a very costly mistake. So what we've got here is these are the terminals that go to my battery charger, and we'll get onto that in a minute. But we're also going to connect these up as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to connect the negative first, like this, and then we're going to screw it in place. Actually, we'll just move that back around that way. There we go. So we're going to screw it in place. And you can use a socket, or you can use a screwdriver on these, but you just have to make sure they're tight. If they're not tight, what will happen is these terminals will get hot, and so will the terminals that are going to the BMS inside. So we've got one side done. Now we're going to do the other side. Hopefully you can kind of see what I'm doing. Move this over a little bit. So ideally you should torque these down with a torque wrench, but I don't have that. So I just make sure they're hand tight. Right, so what we're going to do now is we've got our clamp meter, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the isolator works and we've got the terminals run the right way. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to our XD60. Sorry, this is an XD90. Going to put a positive terminal probe in to the positive end, so the red end, yeah. Going to put the black into the negative, yeah. And then what we're going to do is we're going to flip the isolator and we should be getting the right reading. So we're getting 53.3 volts. And if we switch it off, it goes to 0, okay? So the isolator's working as it should do. Now comes the scary bit and the exciting bit, depending upon which way you want to look at it. Right, so we're going to get all this out of the way and we're going to bring in the power bank. Right. So, the moment of truth. Will this work? Right, so we've got the XT60 connected to the back of the power bank. We've got our DC isolator set to off. Okay, that's always important when you connect these up. We've got 0 coming in on our screen. Okay, we're on 69%. So, I've checked to make sure that everything's tight. If you are one of those people that you get quite paranoid, then you could just do double check, make sure everything's tight. Yeah, battery cables, good. Right, moment of truth. We're going to flip the circuit breaker and we're going to look to see what we get coming in. Okay, so the screen's come live and what you'll see it creeping up. Now, what's happening at the moment inside with the MPPT charge controller, it's taking the 53 volts, what we've got in the battery, and it's working out the best ampage to kind of put into the power bank. Right, so our expansion battery is doing what it's supposed to be doing. We've checked all of the wires. We've checked the new BMS. We've had no weird smokes, no weird smells or anything like that. You'll notice that the power bank is now at 100%, and a few of you are probably thinking to yourself, the cables are going to burst into flames when this gets to 100%, they're going to overheat, everything else. Well, that's not the case. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you what happens with current as the BMS tells, the battery management system tells the battery and the power bank. It knows that it's getting full, and what it does is it reduces the current gradually down to 0. Okay, and what we'll do is we can check that with our clamp meter. At the moment, we're putting in 9 amps and it's gone from 1,000 watts down to 462. Eventually, that will just go down to 0. It will take a time for it to balance it out, and then there'll be absolutely no current flowing through the cables from the expansion battery into power bank. You could leave the DC isolator switch on, and if you were to then put a load on these AC plugs, what it'll do is the current will start drawing from the expansion battery into the power bank through the AC, and it kind of just works seamlessly like a proper expansion battery. That's why this is such a good idea. Now, the problem you've got once you've depleted the battery out of this, and this is where the system falls down a little bit. When you buy an expansion battery dedicated for this machine and you've got an expansion cable, what it does is when you charge this unit, it also charges the expansion battery at the same time. Now, because this is going into the solar input, you don't kind of have that automatic connection from the main unit to the slave battery. It will not. If I start charging this, it will not charge this. Okay, so just kind of bear that in mind. You don't get that kind of seamless charging from the main unit to the slave battery. But you can charge the slave battery separately, which is what I'm going to be doing with a battery charger, which I've connected up, and it will just be left like this. And when I want to charge this battery, I'll just plug it in and just charge it up. And for me, that kind of works because it allows me to keep this running for a lot longer. Between the two of them, this will have over 6,000 watt hours, over 6 kilowatt hours of storage between the two. And to try and get that kind of level of storage, you're talking quite a lot of money, where between the two of these is very cheap, especially this only being 200 quid. So anyway, I hope that helps. If you've got any questions, feel free to reach out. We're gonna test the ampage. Yeah, it's dropping down to 7 amps now. Eventually this is gonna go to 0. And then what we're gonna do is I'm gonna permanently put it in place where it will stay. I'll put the cover back on and we'll charge it up and that'll be the job done. So yeah, hopefully that helps a few people out how to make a cheap expansion battery. Cheers everyone, see you soon. Don't forget to subscribe and like.